I've always known something was wrong with the way people reacted to her, even before she realized it herself. Her name was Lena, and if you asked anyone who knew her casually, they'd tell you the same thing. She talked too much. Not in a charming way, not in a nervous way, just non-stop. Like silence scared her. Like if she didn't fill the air with words, something terrible would crawl in and take its place. She narrated her own thoughts out loud sometimes. She laughed at things that hadn't finished happening yet. She explained jokes until they stopped being jokes. And when conversations died naturally, she panicked and dragged them back to life with whatever came to mind first. People smiled, nodded, waited for openings that never came. And then they stopped inviting her places. Lena didn't notice at first. She thought people were busy. She thought adulthood was just quieter, lonelier. She filled the gaps with more words, longer messages, voice notes that ran on so long people forgot why she'd called. I worked with her for almost a year. Same floor, different departments. I learned quickly that the easiest way to survive a conversation with Lena was to let her talk until she ran out of breath, then escape while she inhaled. What I didn't know back then was that she'd already seen something. The day it started was her birthday, 38. She mentioned it at least a dozen times before noon. She brought cupcakes no one asked for. She narrated every awkward interaction like it was a podcast episode no one subscribed to. Around lunch, she went quiet. Not just quiet, still. Her eyes fixed on something past my shoulder. Her mouth opened like she was about to speak, then closed again. She swallowed hard. I asked if she was okay. She smiled too fast, too wide. "Yeah," she said. "Just remembered something." That was the first lie she told after the warning. Later that afternoon, she left early, said she had a headache, said the lights felt too bright. As she walked away, I noticed her hands were shaking. That night, she called me. I don't know why she chose me. Maybe because I was polite. Maybe because I listened without interrupting. Maybe because she thought I'd believe her. She didn't start with the scary part. She rambled about traffic, about a voicemail from her mother, about a neighbor who parked too close to her car. Then she said, very casually, "I don't think what I saw was meant for me." I asked what she meant. There was a pause. A long one, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. I was in the service hallway, the one behind the old storage rooms. I took the wrong door. I know I did. But the hallway kept going, longer than it should have. My skin prickled. She described a door at the end, unmarked, no handle. Just a seam in the wall like it had been painted over again and again. She heard voices on the other side, familiar ones. Coworkers, neighbors, her own mother. All saying the same thing. Forget what you saw. I laughed because that's what people do when they're uncomfortable. She didn't. "They were smiling," she whispered. "But their eyes weren't right. Like they were reading from something behind me." I told her she was tired, that she'd worked too much, that old buildings do weird things to sound. She thanked me for listening. Then she added, "They told me they'd remind me if I forgot." The next morning, Lena was different. Still quiet, but not frozen this time. Controlled. Careful. Like every word passed through a filter before escaping. People noticed immediately. Meetings went faster. Conversations felt lighter. Someone even said, "You seem calmer lately," like it was a compliment. She started eating lunch with others. People laughed at her jokes now that they were shorter, cleaner. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. I asked her once what changed. Her ears started ringing. I could hear it, a faint, high-pitched whine, like feedback from a bad microphone. She winced, shook her head, and said, "Sorry, what were you saying?" I didn't repeat the question. That was the pattern after that. Any time she got close to talking about the hallway, the door, the voices, the sound came back. Sometimes it made her nauseous. Sometimes she bled from one nostril. Once she collapsed in the break room, clutching her head and whispering apologies to no one. And then, just as suddenly as it came, it would stop. She learned quickly. Silence became her shield. Weeks passed, then months. Lena became likable. Promotions were mentioned, invitations followed. She stopped calling me at night, stopped oversharing, stopped being herself. On the outside, it looked like growth. On the inside, she was terrified. I know this because she finally told me the truth in a whisper in the stairwell where cameras didn't reach. "They're not punishing me," she said. "They're protecting something." I asked what. She shook her head, tears running down her face without a sound. "If I remember," she said, "they'll remember me." That night, she went out with coworkers, karaoke, loud music, alcohol, noise layered on noise. I didn't go. Around midnight, I got a text from an unknown number. "She's about to remember." And then another. "We told her to forget what she saw." She didn't come into work the next day. At first, no one worried. Lena had earned goodwill. People joked that she probably needed a recovery day after karaoke. Someone said she finally learned how to let loose. By noon, her phone went straight to voicemail. By 3, HR sent an email asking if anyone had heard from her. I hadn't told anyone about the stairwell conversation, about the hallway, about the warning. I kept telling myself that if I stayed quiet, nothing would notice me. That night, I dreamed of ringing. Not a sound exactly, more like pressure, like my skull was a glass about to shatter. When I woke, my phone was on the floor, screen lit. One missed call, no number, a voicemail. I almost deleted it, almost convinced myself ignorance was safer, but Lena's face kept flashing in my mind, the way she'd learned to shrink herself to survive. I played it. At first, it was just breathing, shallow, panicked. Then Lena's voice, barely louder than a thought. "I messed up," she whispered. "I sang too much. I forgot to stop." There was laughter in the background, drunk, distant, a bar crowd. Then the sound shifted, warped, like the microphone had been lowered into water. "They're here," she said. "They're smiling again." Someone else spoke then, not shouting, calm, patient. "This is your reminder." Lena tried to scream. The sound cut off mid-breath. The message ended. I drove to her apartment without thinking, didn't change clothes, didn't eat, just went. Her door was unlocked. Inside, everything was neat, too neat. Furniture aligned perfectly, no pictures on the walls, no clutter, like someone had staged the absence of a life. Her phone lay on the kitchen counter face down. I flipped it over. No contacts, no photos, no messages, like she'd never existed. In the bathroom mirror, something had been written in condensation, though the room was dry. "Forget." My ears rang. I staggered back, hands over my head, gasping until the sound faded. When I looked again, the word was gone. I left. I didn't call the police. I didn't tell HR. I didn't tell anyone. The next week, her desk was cleared. Her name disappeared from the directory. People stopped mentioning her entirely. When I brought her up once, casually, during lunch, the table went quiet. Someone frowned at me, confused. "Who?" That was when I understood. It wasn't just about silencing her. It was about rewriting the space she occupied, erasing the echo. I tried to move on, tried to be careful with my words, tried not to think too loudly. But once you know where the cracks are, you start seeing them everywhere. A janitor mopping the same spot over and over, eyes unfocused. A receptionist repeating the same sentence word for word to different people. A stranger on the train smiling at me a little too knowingly. Then I found the door. It was in the parking structure beneath my building. I'd parked there for years. I knew every pillar, every flickering light. But that night, the far wall was longer. At the end was the seam, painted over, waiting. I stood there for a long time, heart hammering, ears screaming softly like a warning siren. I didn't touch it. I turned around. Behind me, reflected faintly in the concrete sheen, were shapes, people, faces I almost recognized, coworkers, neighbors, Lena. Their mouths moved in unison. Forget what you saw. I ran. I don't sing anymore. I don't ramble. I don't let silence scare me into filling it. I edit every thought before it reaches my tongue. Sometimes, late at night, I feel the ringing start up again, a reminder that forgetting is a skill, and I'm still learning. Because somewhere behind a wall that shouldn't exist, something is listening, and it remembers everything we try not to say.